Revelation 12 has to be one of the most misread passages of scripture of all time, and what's really fascinating about it is that the people who are misreading Revelation 12 are the same people who say to read the Bible plainly and literally, and it's crazy how you can read Revelation 12 and come to a literal conclusion that is such a poor interpretation and such a poor example of a plain reading of the text, and it's really fascinating to me how we can possibly get there. If you don't know what I'm talking about, this is the passage that refers to Satan's fall, it refers to the battle in heaven, and the time period during which those things take place, and whether they are the beginning of time or the end of time or somewhere in between. And I'm going to argue that they're very much somewhere in between. It also happens to be the amillennial reading of the passage. It's so much different than the idea that there was a war in heaven at the beginning of time, or that there will be another one where Satan gets kicked out at the end of time, but rather I think it's something that has already happened but did not happen back at the beginning. If that sounds interesting to you, please consider sticking around with the channel. I'm Credence Questions. I'm happy to have you here, and I hope that you would just let me know if you enjoyed this video. Consider liking, subscribing, following along. It really means the most, and I appreciate it. Now, let's look at the context for Revelation 12. These are signs that are being given to John when he's exploring heaven and being given all these different signs and things. Back in Revelation 11 was when we're told about the two witnesses, and then we're told about the seventh trumpet, which sort of announces Christ's reign and says that he shall reign forever and ever, and he sees these mighty visions. And then it proceeds into this next vision of the woman and the dragon, which I'll go ahead and read to you. A great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. She was pregnant and was crying out in birth pains and the agony of giving birth. Okay, let's stop for a moment and just absorb that. What could 12 stars represent? The obvious reading, I think, is that it refers to the 12 tribes of Israel, okay? And the woman who is giving birth is the nation of Israel, who is made up of 12 tribes, and we'll see how that equates kind of as we go forward. Some other arguments could be that it's the 12 disciples, but that doesn't really make sense with the rest of the context of the passage, and there's not a lot of other 12s for us to turn to in relation to what this could represent, so let's keep going. Verse 3, and another sign appeared in heaven, behold, a great red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his heads 7 diadems. His tail swept down a third of the stars of heaven and cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth, so that when she bore her child, he might devour it. She gave birth to a male child, one who is to rule all nations with a rod of iron. But her child was caught up to God and to his throne, and the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by God, in which she is to be nourished for 1260 days. Okay, so we have the woman, Israel, giving birth to the male child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. That's obviously Jesus. So notes about that is that is used in the other messianic prophecies. The rod of iron passage, it does refer to a shepherd as well, but it's used to refer to rulership. So here we have the rulership via the rod of iron, which is clearly a reference to Jesus. The tail of the dragon sweeps down a third of the stars of heaven and casts them down to earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth. He was trying to kill the male child. She gave birth to the male child, one who's to rule all the nations, but her child was caught up to God and his throne. That sounds a lot like Christ's ascension. Now we're going to read the second passage, which is essentially a retelling of the same thing, and this is the most plain reading once again. Verse 7, now war arose in heaven, Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back, but he was defeated, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven. The great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He's thrown down to earth, and the angels were thrown down with him. And I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, now the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ have come, for the accuser of our brothers has been thrown down, who accuses them day and night before our God. They have conquered him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, for they loved not their lives even unto death. Therefore rejoice, O heavens, you who dwell in them. But woe to you, O earth and sea, for the devil has come down to you in great wrath, because he knows that his time is short. And when the dragon saw that he had been thrown down to earth, he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. But the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, so that she might fly from the serpent into the wilderness, to the place where she is to be nourished for a time, times, and half a time. Then the dragon became furious with the woman and went off to make war on the rest of her offspring, on those who keep the commandments of God and hold to the testimony of Jesus. So what you have here is a very clear depiction that the reason that there's no place found for Satan in heaven is because the ruler, the Christ, has come, and there is no longer any place found for him, and he is conquered by the blood of the Lamb and the word of the testimony of the saints. The blood of the Lamb means the crucifixion. So the point at which this war in heaven happens and Satan no longer has a place found for him in heaven is after Jesus' crucifixion. This is the amillennial reading. And that after the crucifixion, Satan comes down to earth and he chooses to try and pursue Israel. Okay, Israel is the church as well. And you see that when it says that Israel is taken away to be nourished, and so he pursues the rest of the offspring, the nations. And so Satan is pursuing all of the nations who would be Christ, but he knows that his rulership kingship is at an end. This is very much the amillennial reading of this passage, and I think it makes absolutely the most sense. If you're just reading this and you hear that a nation of 12 tribes gives birth to a Messiah, that's Israel. Israel gives birth to a Messiah, the rod of iron, then the Messiah ascends. There's no longer a place found for Satan. The ascension obviously happens after the crucifixion, so it's by the blood of the Lamb, and Satan is thrown down, where he decides to try and make war on what's left of God's people. That would be the Christians. And you can discuss whether the dispensational reading is possible, where this woman being taken apart means that Israel is in some way separate than the Christian saints. It's possible, but I think there's other better readings. We don't have to get into all that right now. But the point is, this is the only passage in the Bible that talks about Satan's fall, and the only passage in the Bible that refers to a war in heaven where the stars are brought down, where the other fallen angels are cast down to earth. And I think the clear reading of it is that it happens in relation to the resurrection, the crucifixion, the death, and the ascension of Christ, and not anything else. Which is part of why, when Jesus is inaugurating sort of the beginning of his rule, it's widely considered that is when he sends out the apostles to reclaim the fallen nations. Now, this has a lot to do with what we've talked about Michael Heiser, and if you want more information on that, check out my videos on him. I'll have them linked below. But the idea that there are 70 nations other than the Jews, and in Luke, when Jesus sends out the 70 followers, it's representative of him reclaiming the whole world, and it's at that point that he says, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. So he seems to be prophesying in that instance the fall of Satan in relation to the spreading of Christ's kingdom. And so then when Christ finally ascends and is ruling over this kingdom on earth, that is when Satan no longer has a place found for him in heaven, and is only trying to make war on the saints here on earth until we conquer the entirety of earth and hand it over to Christ as his kingdom. Now that sounds a bit post-millennial and a bit amillennial, but I think the view is simply more complicated than can be categorized, and this is the most base level reading of Revelation 12 and how it should be interpreted. Let me know your thoughts on this, and if you'd be interested in hearing a little bit more about the amillennial readings of Revelation 12 and how they kind of fit into these things in a basic way. This has been Creed's Questions. I hope you enjoyed. Please consider following along with the channel and letting me know your thoughts. I'd love to engage with you, and I hope that you enjoyed. I hope you have a good rest of the day. Thanks for coming.